welcome to Growthology. I'm your host, Carlos Hidalgo, and today I'm excited to have a colleague and a friend on the podcast join me, and actually a new VP. We're going to get into that here as he started his new venture. Brandon Redlinger, thanks for joining us on Growthology.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, it'll be fun to catch up.
So a little commonality here for our audience. You had moved into, we were part, when my wife and I lived in Colorado, we were part of this plane community. And I forget when it was. I saw that you had, I saw your tag of, living in Colorado Springs. And I was like, oh, whereabouts the Springs? And actually, we were in that same plane community for a while. Didn't even know it. And, it just shows to the growth of Colorado. But I hope
Yeah.
in Colorado are going well. And we plan to be out there in April.
Oh, nice. Well, let me know. Definitely would love to see you.
It'd be great. It would be great. So thanks for taking the time. Before we get into all things growth and all things marketing, I just want to, something we ask all of our guests is, if you were not in B2B marketing, what would you be doing?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I would be in like HR or culture or talent or people, one of those roles. That was actually, so aside from one quick career stint, I've been in sales and marketing tech my whole life, between, Engagio and Demand Base and Revenue.io. And then I took a job at an HR company because I said, if I wasn't in marketing, I think I would be in HR in some way or another, but I'm not going to leave marketing. So why don't I market a HR tech company? So that was a quick stop that I had before Chili Piper.
Okay, so you mentioned you had one, besides sales and marketing, you had another stint. What was that other stint, or was it?
Yeah,
talk about it. Or
yeah, for sure. I mean, I was running marketing for a company called Crosscheck, and they were more in the talent acquisition and talent data space. Mm-hmm. So again, if I have a real fascination with people, and I love seeing people grow and develop and helping them reach their potential. And I'm also really big on, how do you build culture within organizations? And as a marketing leader, I think that is one of my most important jobs, is how do I actually build culture among the marketing team, and how do I actually develop those operating principles, and how do I enforce that, and how do I recognize and reward people? Because I really do believe in, you take care of your people, they take care of the business. But a lot these days is just, there's so much pressure right now with people getting budget cuts and VCs saying, hey, you got to cut your burn, you got to extend your runway through 2025 now, and everyone's kind of scrambling. So what they end up doing is they're cracking the whip harder, and they're cutting people, and they're forgetting culture. Mm-hmm. And I think that's at the detriment of the company. But those companies out there that are doing well rely on culture more than anything right now.
Right.
So that's why I believe that's why I would be in HR, people, whatever that function is, like somehow in that people function, if I wasn't in marketing.
I think you and I share that common draw to that. I'm fascinated by corporate cultures and team cultures, because I think the bigger the company, you can have a team culture that doesn't necessarily reflect the big C corporate
exactly
culture. And vice versa. You can have a really strong corporate culture, and then you get down to that level of the team, and maybe that hasn't made it all the way down to the DNA of those frontline leaders. And you see that sometimes, but I think that's fascinating. And to your point, I do think a strong culture trickles that down to the customers.
Yes, 100%.
And 100%. You said it. If you take care of your people are going to take care of the business.
Yep.
And one of the best examples I've seen of that, maybe a few years back, maybe not as strong, but I still think is Southwest Airlines. This is a company that Herb Kelleher was relentless about taking care of people, building a culture. And you actually, when you booked with Southwest, there was a time where you actually looked forward to flying.
Yeah.
They were so different than all the other airlines who acted like they were doing you a favor.
Yeah, exactly. And they're the ones that always have those videos that go viral, that of the people kind of, ad-libbing, or they have their own spiel for the pre-takeoff thing of buckling your seatbelt and tray table, And yeah, they just they let their people have fun. They
Yeah.
let their people like fully express themselves in a business setting.
Well, and you just use the F word, fun. And one of
Mm,
the things that really I've been in, like you, I had a couple of pit stops. I was in nonprofit twice
mm,
my career, but by and large, I've been in B2B marketing and sales. And one of the things that I don't understand is I run into more marketers, especially who just seem to not be having fun
yeah.
in the roles and in what we're doing. And I'm thinking of all the times to be a B2B marketer. Now is one of the best times because we're actually being valued and seen as growth drivers for our organization. So I'm curious from your perspective, you just, as you mentioned, Chili Piper, you just started there, but you've held subsequent roles across a lot of different companies.
Hmm.
What do you think is sapping that fun aspect? And not to say that work's always going to be
Yeah.
rainbows and unicorns, but I think we should be having fun in our roles because of what we get to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think okay, that is the big reason. One of the big reasons I joined Chili Piper is because they do have fun, interesting, engaging marketing, and they're not a lot, or they're not afraid to take risks. And I think that's the big thing is a lot of companies out there, yeah, they're afraid to take risks. I saw this at my last company. We were again in the HR and talent acquisition space, and as if we're in HR, we have a real buttoned up HR team. And just one of my, God, this is like my first campaign there, and I said something like the copy was something like become an HR ninja or something. And they're
Mhm.
like, oh, sorry, we can't use the word ninja. That's potentially culturally appropriating. I was like, okay, how about Jedi? And they're like, well, no, we can't say Jedi because Disney is a very litigious company. We don't want to get sued by Disney. Okay, how about we say All Star? Well, that really caters towards males, and we have a more predominant female base. Okay, what can I say that? Like I couldn't say anything. And it was like so watered down, boring marketing. That was the result. It was boring. It was plain vanilla,
Mhm.
and that's not fun. It's the opposite of fun.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing that story, I felt part of my life get sucked out of me.
I know, right?
Really? I mean, ninja, I mean, I just,
I know, right?
I don't
Like,
understand
come on.
that. So, it is interesting though, and you put a post on LinkedIn recently where you talked about how you started your career in sales.
Yes.
So I would love to understand how that has helped you be a better marketer.
Oh man, yeah, I can't tell you the benefits of started out in sales. Yeah, didn't mean to really start out in sales. Always had more of a marketing bent, but I could I found myself there. I was tricked into being in sales, but no, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because yeah, I really understand and have lived in the shoes of a sales rep, so I know what they're looking for. And I think a good analogy for this is um, so quick story. When my wife and I got married, we wanted to do a choreographed dance for our first dance. And I'm your typical like two left feet, and my wife she's the music major. She has all the rhythm and style in the world, and that's just not me. So we started taking dance classes, so like ballroom dance classes, and I was terrible. I could not lead. Of course, if everyone doesn't know, the male is usually the lead,
Mhm.
and I was just struggling with trying to get my wife to do the steps that I wanted her to do in the dance. And it was one class that really made the biggest difference for me. It was when the teacher said, okay, Brandon, hold on a second. I'm going to be the lead and you play the part of your wife, and you can see what it's actually like to follow.
Mhm.
And that's when it really connected for me. It's like, oh, this is what she's looking for. Oh, this is the cue that she needs. Oh, this is what it feels like. So that now I know how to actually do that for her. And it was, yeah, it was the biggest unlock. And we went on to have a perfect choreographed dance, and actually stayed in dance class for a few years after that. So it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But that changed everything. And that's the approach that I now also take to business as well. So if I need to learn how to work better with this is one perfect example, work better with our CX leader. I was like, okay, let me go take a CX course. And I took a course on Pavilion about how to be a great chief customer success officer. Of course, I have no desire to be a customer success professional, but I learned what they're looking for and how they're doing their job, and now I can be a better partner.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. And some of the things I hear from marketing said about sales, they're prima donnas, they're lazy,
Yeah.
they don't want to do anything. And I'm like, no, and I've spent a good part of my career in sales as well as marketing. And my whole response to that is they just want to sell.
Yeah.
And there's only so many hours in a day where they get to do that. And the more we pile onto a salesperson, what we have to understand is that's how they're making their living.
Yeah.
They don't meet their goals, they're going to be let go. That's a pretty big motivator.
Exactly.
And, I think I believe that every marketer would do well to sit in a sales role, whether it's an SDR, inside or field sales, even for just a month.
100%.
Understand, because we know the internal pressures, but the external pressures of getting beat up by prospects and customers on top.
Yeah.
It does change your perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the biggest pitfalls that marketers make, whether that is working with internal teams or external teams, or like marketing to their customers, is imposing their own beliefs on their customers. Sure. Right? I wouldn't pay that much for this. Okay, you're not the buyer, right? Like, or whatever that might be. I wouldn't be motivated by this. Well, you're not a sales rep. So right. It's really taking their own internal beliefs and projecting that on someone else. I think that gets in the way, and really comes back to empathy and understanding of who you're talking to, whether that's your customers or your internal stakeholders.
So with that, I agree with it 100%. Why are more marketing teams and marketing leaders not investing in that insight phase? And whether it's a phase, I really think it's a continual process, but really investing in, let's get to understand our customers. Let's use our data. Let's go talk to them. Let's spend time with sales. Let's go to the QBRs. Let's take a week and go on sales calls with our sales team. Is it too much pressure? Is it this, I still see all this talk about alignment, which makes my teeth hurt, because
exactly.
How are we still talking about this after 25 years?
Exactly.
What I would love in your experience is to just understand is, why are more organizations not doing that? Because for me, I believe it's foundational to really good marketing.
Yeah, 100%. So I do think it is the popular thing to say on LinkedIn these days, but I still feel like not all marketers actually do what they say. And I always say, do as the influencers do, not as they say, right? Just watch what they do. But I feel like part of it is, yes, there's more pressure, and especially since COVID, right? Like everyone's working from home, and you don't get all those interactions in the office anymore. So now I have to be a little bit more loud about what I'm doing. And that does cause a little bit more internal conflict. And you don't actually, you're thinking more about, right, how do I make sure that my boss knows that I've been working since I've been home, right? Like I see people all the time take extra steps to make sure that I'm posting on Slack at 10 o'clock at night now, or whatever that is, to signal that they are doing their job, that they are working, that they are hustling, or whatever that is. You know what I mean? So I do think the whole work from home and remote culture has exacerbated that a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That part of driving some of that misalignment, but I can understand where it comes from. And the posting on Slack and the hustling, I think you know how I feel about all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't really show me that you're working.
Exactly.
What results are you producing, and how are you helping us drive growth? If you can do that in 2 hours a day, God bless you. Go do it in 2 hours a day.
Exactly.
So you staying on the theme of marketing and sales, you've talked a lot, and you had a recent post, which I really liked. I think you have a webinar, which by the time this airs,
it's
already been passed. Hopefully they'll record it and we'll put it in the show notes. But you talked about the changing customer, the changing customer of B2B. I'd love for you to unpack that, what you've seen sitting in your role. Obviously, you've gone across multiple different audiences, target audience. But what's the impact on marketing? What's the impact on sales? Are there other growth-facing roles in the organizations that are also impacted? So it's kind of a lot to unpack, but I'm sure we can get through it in the time that we've allotted.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so yeah, there's been some really good research out there, and both Gartner and Forrester back their research up with some numbers. And Gartner reports that 75% of B2B buyers prefer to buy online without any interaction with a salesperson. And I think Forrester puts that around 70%. So really, that means we're in the era of the self-directed buyer, right? And I think some of our B2C experiences also reinforce this, because you can get anything you want now on Amazon. Right. And next day delivery, sometimes even same day delivery, right? And even like Netflix, the whole Netflix culture too, and that definitely changes the way buyers buy. Also, buyers have more information than they've ever had before, so they have a little bit more power now. And but the other side of that is Gartner also put out some research saying that people who do not have interactions with sales reps actually have more remorse or buyer's regret because they're not making the most informed decision.
Right.
Right. So there's really two sides of that, and it's very interesting. But first, let's take a look at why this is the new reality. And I think it's because sales reps do get a bad rap. A lot of sales reps out there are more concerned just about selling you things. Like you said earlier, there's nothing that's more motivating than a paycheck, right? And that is really how sales reps are measured, and that is really a lot of times how people define their own success. How much money am I making? And I think that again kind of exacerbates the point there. But there are really great sales reps out there. Do you know Andy Paul?
I do.
Yeah.
I like Andy a lot. Love his stuff.
Yeah, great guy. And I love his definition of the job of a sales rep. And it's something I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's something along the lines of the job of a sales rep is to help determine what the buyer needs and how to give that to them. Right. And sometimes that's not your product, and that's fine too. No is the second best answer.
Yeah.
But you don't want to sell them something that you know they're going to churn later, that you know they don't need, or that you know that company won't even be set up to succeed. They can't actually implement this internally. And I think that's what a lot of buyers are going through right now. There's a great book out there called The Jolt Effect.
Yep.
And Matt Dixon, exactly. And a lot of what he talks about is that people do not have faith in their own ability, in their company's ability to get the results that these solutions promise. So a lot of what you have to do as a buyer is enable your champion to sell that internally, to be set up for success with the product. And again, you can't really do that if it's complete self-directed buying. And it's why it's just a misalignment. I think we as revenue professionals have to do better, right?
You will not get an argument from me after that. There's some things I want to dive into deeper. So the 70 to 75%, I think you had posted that, and I've read that before. Full disclosure, I've not read the full report. It's sitting in a queue somewhere with my
exactly.
When I get some time, whenever that is going to be, I'll dive into that. My issue with that is I can see that when it's a transactional sale. I can see that when I don't need a sales rep to walk me through an enterprise license of what would normally, you see all these vendors now, they have individual, team, and then enterprise call sales. I don't want to call sales. I've got 10 people. I need this license. I need your full capabilities. Just let me do it. But when it comes to a bigger solution, like a ERP, like a finance solution, a human capital management solution, I find it really hard to digest that 70 to 75%. I can buy off on, I want to do most of that journey
Yeah.
self-development and create a short list, but I can't believe that people involved, especially because we know, to your point, customers being uncertain of their process, they're bringing more of their colleagues to the table. So they're not super exposed as the sole decision maker. I think the desire to have someone to help bounce ideas off of, and that's where I think
Mm-hmm.
sales professionals can set themselves apart. I'm not here to just sell you. I'm here to help you make the most informed decision possible to
Exactly.
your root cause need.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. I have to pull up that report again. I think they said this is the most prominent, that 75% stat is most prominent among Gen Z and millennials or something like that. So a little bit of the younger crowd. And I think they also put a range on that, like up to $55,000 purchases.
Okay.
So probably
Okay.
talking less about enterprise deals. Yeah, and more your point solutions maybe, right?
Sure. You also made mention in our previous guest, Dave Brock, talked
Ah,
about
yes.
yeah, he's one of my favorite guys.
I love Dave.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm like, Dave, we got to figure out how to get California and New York closer to each other,
Yeah.
time together. But he mentioned something, and you alluded to it as well, is the customers, and I might butcher it, and I'm not trying to demean any buyers out there, but really not knowing how to buy, not knowing or having the confidence in making
Yeah.
the decisions, because there's so much noise out there. There's so much latest and greatest, shiny object syndrome. We know the role sales can play if they're doing it right to be helpful, kind of be that guide, that informative resource. What can marketing do, starting with even brand engagement, to really build that trust in a customer, to say, through my content, through my outreach, through our engagement, my goal isn't to make you a customer. My goal is to help you, again, make that most informed decision.
Yeah, I think, man, it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning as understanding your customer. I think a lot of people, they, this both the ICP and buyer personas is just an exercise they do, and they refresh it every few years, and then it gets lost and no one ever actually uses it, right? But it's actually a very valuable exercise, especially as your company and your product evolves, as the market evolves, as new competitors come into the space. Like the value that you bring might change, and you need to be constantly challenging yourself on that, and constantly talking to those customers, and constantly trying to understand, okay, what is the value that we're actually delivering, and just always question yourself, always be testing your own hypotheses there. Because that was a big thing when COVID hit. And I think that was also another big thing once a lot of companies in the last 18-24 months started really cutting their cost.
Yeah.
Because especially in the space that I was in the HR space, they were cutting tools, and it was, the value is no longer, especially for my company, right, is no longer how can you hire better people. No one was hiring.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So it's okay. There's actually a lot of data here. So how can you actually use the data that we have here to make better informed decisions on who you're letting go?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like that became a much stronger value proposition because of the changing environment. And I think it has to do with, again, understanding your customers and really questioning your own assumptions that you have about the value that you're delivering.
Which is hard to do when you just go on autopilot.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's so hard.
I read a post the other day from somebody, and it said, forget all the customer research and data digging. Make sure you dominate with your marketing. And I just wanted to respond, how can I dominate with my marketing if I
Forget
that consistent step? And I like what you said. It's continual. It's not a point in time. I did my personas. Now because think about how much changes just in the span of a year.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's going to impact the customers and how they buy, how they relate to your brand. I think it's significant. I'm curious to you, especially in your role there at Chili Piper, and I know you're new. I want to get into that as well.
Yeah.
But what role are you seeing, and what is the priority that customers are putting on experience throughout that end-to-end journey?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so I think buyers buyers that are not buying something for the first time, like we've already bought, a marketing automation system. I've used them all before. I need to just go, purchase whatever. Like I know what I need in my head.
Right.
You probably are rely on experience a little bit less, and you're a little bit more technical, and you're talking to your solutions engineers or whatever, and just making sure integrations are right and security and compliance, like that sort of thing, right? But first time buyers of solutions, yeah, I'll go back to like they need help making that informed decision. Because if you look, I was in the ABM space, right? And there are a lot of ABM vendors right now. And a lot of ABM vendors do a lot of different things, but if you go to their websites, they all sound like the exact same thing, right? From the headlines to the case studies to the benefits that they say they all sound the exact same, even though they do different things and they do it in different ways. And it's really easy to get duped by marketing and by the sales reps when you don't have that experience. So if you do have those buyers who really are trying to understand you and have that experience and can say, all right, companies like you do these things, right? Successful companies like you who are using our platform look like this, right? So I think that's a really powerful step in the buying process, and just matching, like knowing where the buyer is and like their experience with your category of solutions.
It's interesting you say that, and how you differentiate the experienced buyer versus the non-experienced. We worked with a client once where one of their most downloaded pieces of content, non-gated, downloaded pieces of
Yeah.
content was how to build an RFP. Because they were going out to people who they didn't have, and we heard this from their customers. They're like, procurement writes RFPs, but procurement doesn't have the context. Procurement does only.
Exactly.
Procurement wants to check. We need to know these things. And so we just put out a template, a content piece that said, when you're looking for this type of solution, here's what you need in your RFP. And it went gangbusters.
I love that.
And people were now coming back to them going, oh, hey, we want to include you.
Yes.
Imagine that. We made their jobs better. And I think it was Christensen who said, start with the jobs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are they trying to do? What are they trying to solve for? And if you can craft your message in that way, I think it's vitally important.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, as a former product marketer, I love the job to be done framework for sure.
Yeah, but I think even demand marketers or revenue marketers and salespeople,
100%.
if I can understand what a customer is trying to accomplish, what are the 3 to 4 overarching goals that they need to accomplish in the year, or sometimes they've got 3-year goals, or even if they're doing agile and they're working in sprints, I can then very quickly determine I'm not the one for you, or here are the ways I can help you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or at least here are the things you need to think about. And if I can do that, I'm going to fail fast and not waste their time or mine.
Yep.
Or I'm going to build trust pretty quickly, because I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to help you solve.
Exactly. 100%.
So I'm curious, excuse me. We'll take that out in editing. But I'm curious, with your new role, what have you seen? I mean, you came into a new company. I think anybody in the space knows, or at least has heard of the name Chili Piper.
Yep.
What have you seen as some of the things that new guy coming in, inheriting a team, working with an established brand, at least in this space, what have you seen as some of the challenges, and how have you approached getting your team really focused from a customer-centric perspective?
Yeah, great question. So I'm, as you mentioned, 30 days in, And so one of the things that I really did in the first 30 days, I mean, it's like the main job in your first 30 days is like the listening tour, right? It's understanding both the internal dynamics, it's understanding the customer, it's talking to your people, and just building that trust with them, and they'll open up to you and they'll say, these are the things that are working, these are the things that are not, these are the things that I would change. And a lot of it is just trying to really make sense of it all, because there's one person might tell one story, one person might tell another, and you want to get a few different angles of it, and then you got to really make sense of it in your own mind, and learning team dynamics, that sort of thing. And honestly, I learned a lot more talking to people who didn't buy Chili Piper than people who did. And I only really stumbled on that because I was talking to a few friends. I got a lot of friends in the space, and I was talking to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we didn't buy Chili Piper." I was like, oh, "Okay, that's interesting. Tell me why you didn't buy."
Yeah.
Or, "We bought, your Forms Concierge product, but we didn't buy the distro product." Okay, interesting. Tell me why. And I learned so much more about that I can now take back to the team, and they're going to be honest with me. And of course, I'm not going to say, "Hey, guess what? Carlos said over here," when I was talking
Sure.
to him.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. But yeah, it's having those open, honest conversations, and you get so much more with those one-on-one conversations, especially in the early days. And I mean, I had my own biases too, because I was a Chili Piper customer. I bought Chili Piper
Right.
in the past, so it really was approaching it with like beginner's mind. Pretend
Mhm.
I know nothing. I'm going to ask all the dumb questions, and I probably didn't ask enough dumb questions. I probably should have asked more, but I was really trying to, yeah, approach it with that beginner's mindset. Um, and then, yeah, delivering those insights to the team and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm hearing out there. No judgment." And that, I think that's the biggest thing, is people let judgment get in the way,
Yeah.
and they get defensive pretty quickly and they don't want to hear it. But that is one thing that Chili Piper actually did really well. One thing that they have all their new employees read is nonviolent communication.
Mhm.
And I think that really opened everyone up there to hearing different perspectives and hearing different things. So those are just a few thoughts on it.
Well, I love what you just described as the listening tour instead of the
Yeah.
speaking tour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not, hey, I'm the new VP. I'm going to tell you how things are going to be, but you tell me from a customer, an employee, a sales perspective, so you can consume all of that. What is that plan then to say this has to become not just a first 30 days, but this has to become a regular part of what we do as a marketing team? Because as our customers shift and grow and become more complex, we have to keep pace or even be ahead, and so we can continue to help them. So are you trying to organize that in a way where that becomes sustainable and just part of the consistent process that you do from them for marketing?
Yeah. So how I think about that is like, build that into your operating principles. And I'm not at the point where I'm ready to put those marketing and operating principles in place yet. Again, still 30 days in, but that
Yeah.
was probably one of the best things that I did at my last company when I took over the marketing team. Because they were all over the place. There's the company values, which of course they should align with the company values, but operating principles are really telling the marketing team how to act every day.
Mhm.
And one of our big ones was putting the customer first. And okay, what does that actually mean? I want to tell stories about how I've seen people in the company do that, because culture really is passed down through a lot of the storytelling. And then it's the rewarding of the people, and then the recognition in both the marketing meetings and company meetings, and other ways that you give praise through Slack channels. So I really do think it is establishing those marketing, like those operating principles within that marketing team, and then making sure you're recognizing and rewarding. And it's not just like, I feel like too often companies use like values and operating principles as recruiting tools,
Yeah.
and it's more platitudes on the website than it is actual culture, right?
That is very, very true. Yes, we could do a
Yeah.
whole other podcast just on that. You said something about rewards and recognition, which triggered a question for me. What is
Mhm.
your take on signing marketing up for a commission similar to sales as part of their comp package?
I like to, so yes, I do like that. Probably not as big of a percentage of their OT, their take home. But I do like that because it really holds them accountable. And I think that is a big piece of just good leadership, is holding your people accountable, being very crystal clear on what their roles are and how to succeed in that role, and giving them the tools that they need to be successful and also enjoy their work. I'm a big fan of people both being able to do their work and enjoying the work that they do.
Yeah.
Yep. And then yeah, putting, and you got to be careful, because I don't think it should be heavily on revenue of the company, because they don't, or new business of the company, because I don't think they have as direct control over that. I want it to be more heavily relied on pipeline.
Mhm.
Pipeline is a great way to measure if you're actually converting leads, or the work that you're doing is actually converting into good sales conversations. And it's up to the salesperson from there.
Yeah.
Hopefully they are trained right to then turn that into actual revenue, new business for the company. So I'm definitely a big fan of using comp as another way to incentivize the right behaviors.
Yeah, and I think it also drives that alignment. I think also to your point, which I agree with, the pipeline. I can't tell a marketer. I'd have a hard time convincing a marketer. Someone else has to close this deal in order for you to be paid.
Exactly.
But I think what it does also provide leadership is if there is an issue, if you are missing your numbers, well, if it hits the pipeline, it's not necessarily a marketing problem, at least at first blush. We may have a sales execution problem, which
Mm-hmm.
means we have to do better at training the right behavior in our salespeople, because they're now getting compensated on deals that are closed.
Exactly. So it's always a fine line. It's always a balance. And yeah, you do have to have those checks and balances, as long as you have a good relationship with your head of sales, your VP of sales counterpart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think pipeline's the right way to go.
Awesome. Appreciate you letting me throw that curveball at you.
Of course, of course.
One last question that I had for you is, I've been in this space for 30 years. It's hard for me to believe that it's been that long. We talked about alignment, and I still see some other things. And maybe it's the LinkedIn echo chamber where the algorithms just show me the
Yeah.
same thing. But are we living a little bit of Groundhog's Day where we keep trying to fight the same battles, where you think that should be done? And in that, are we overcomplicating, from marketing and sales perspective, our path to corporate growth? I know our customers are complex. Do we have to make growth as complex? Do we have to match that complexity? Or are there ways we can simplify it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think I feel like there are like cycles that we go in. And every few years we are reliving the same thing, right? It's like, yeah, there was a big movement to bundle everything. Then there was the unbundling. Now there's the like, it's just going to go back and forth. And I think that is just kind of the nature of the business. There's ebbs and flows. But are you talking maybe more specifically like tactics, or?
Yeah, I think there's some tactics where I feel like, and I've shared this with other guests, maybe it's my old man rant, where we're slapping new names on old
Yeah, yeah.
reliable things that people have known for years. I mean, ABM is a great example.
Hmm.
I'm glad it came to marketing or marketing, but sales teams have been doing this for ages, and it's not like it was anything. But if you looked at the general approach, it was like, oh my word, this new approach.
Yeah, yeah, I see.
Like, guys, this isn't new. And then the proliferation of technology, got to have this, got to have that in order to do this. And it's like, can we just focus on some things that are truly going to move the needle?
Yeah, yeah. ABM's a great example. I think kind of maybe like the growth or growth hacking or the new whatever. That's another example of it too. But it's just yeah, I don't really care what we call it, as long as we're evolving our thinking. And you're right, there is always a new hot thing where maybe it's a one company or one person takes something that was not that's been around forever, throws a new name on it, and then says they have the new way, the hot new way that you should be operating your business, or that you should be doing your marketing. Yeah, I care less about that, but more about, are we always evolving? Are we learning? Because I do think the difference with ABM is, yeah, we have more technology and we have better ways of doing things now. We have better frameworks. And if calling it ABM was the thing to help us evolve, great, you know. But if it's just a matter of, hey, let me slap a new name on it and then shout it from the rooftops, and there's really nothing new, that doesn't really do us any good.
I like how you separated that, and literally you've challenged my thinking on this, because I think I've spent too much time trying to say, guys, this is the same thing. Evolve. That's going to be my new litmus test. Is helping us evolve our thinking and evolve the way we drive revenue outcomes. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I would challenge all of our listeners to use that as well. Is this going to help you evolve the way you approach things, evolve how you engage your customer? So very, very insightful. I might even make that the title. We may even make that the title of the episode, Evolving.
I love it. No, I love it. I love it. Cool.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. We will have your LinkedIn profile where people can catch up with you and follow you in the show notes. I would highly recommend that you do follow Brandon. He's got some great insights, and he freely shares those with his LinkedIn audience. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, Carlos.
Great. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in to this episode of Growthology. If you've taken anything away, make it all about your customer. And thanks again for Brandon, and we hope that you make it a great day.